Today is July 15th, 2018, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at the 2018 Senate elections. So I've decided that every 2 weeks I will start updating the Senate map leading into the earlier months into the 2018 midterm season, which has already started, but the primaries aren't yet over. A number of them finish off in August. So once we start being serious around there, around October, I will start updating the map regularly. By that, I mean weekly. But right now, we're going to look at this map. Today's July 15th, around the middle of the month of July, and we're going to go ahead and look at a number of these states that were previously in certain political parties' columns that have now flipped to the other political party. And it's all about the candidates. These races are no longer partisan races, except for a number of these states. But when we go down to the close ones that actually matter and actually decide the majority between the Republicans and the Democrats, these are not partisan races whatsoever. When we look at the candidates, there shouldn't be candidates that should be winning in opinion polling in a number of these states, and a number of these states shouldn't be competitive based off how partisan a number of other states have gotten. But when it comes to Senate elections, especially in opposition party years, it looks like a number of these races that should be safe for a certain political party no longer are safe. And that's not just going for the Republican Party, but also the Democratic Party, too. So, 24 Democrats, because California is not flipping. It just won't flip. It's just stuck blue. And 42 Republicans. And, California does make sense considering there are only 2 Democratic candidates, just as there were in 2016, which might be a new trend we might see in California. But right now, we can go ahead and take a look at the safe states for the Republican Party. That includes the states of Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, Mississippi, and Mississippi's special election. So these are pretty much the only safe states for the Republicans, which put them 3 away from the majority. When we go to the safe states for the Democrats, that includes all up across the Northeast, including Maine, Minnesota, with the Minnesota special election as well, especially with a very popular incumbent senator on the top of the ticket, New Mexico, Washington, Hawaii I just filled in, and now we have 39 Democrats and 47 Republicans. So there are always some likely states. Actually, Minnesota's second race I could probably characterize as a likely race, but that includes the Rust Belt. The Rust Belt could get a little bit closer, especially with some approval ratings dropping, but right now the Republican candidates are not looking too good against the Democratic incumbents. 47 Republicans, 42 Democrats right now. So 11 races up for grabs, and we're going to go ahead and look at the states that are leaning in the Democratic column, considering they have a great disadvantage going into this map. Let's look at the party composition nationwide, and then we'll go into the states that are leaning for the Democrats. That includes states like Ohio. Right now, Sherrod Brown is doing pretty well, especially with this approval rating. He's doing pretty well in a state like Ohio, especially with election polls that show this in his favor, especially since Jim Renocki is not the best candidate for the GOP. When we go over to West Virginia, again, I understand Patrick Morrisey, the Attorney General, statewide known. He's a good Republican, but he's not going to beat Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin right now is probably leading. He is leading in opinion polling, but he's probably going to lead on Election Day and win his race here for another 6-year term of the U.S. Senate. When we go over to Montana, another state that I see narrowly in the Democratic column and not flipping to the GOP because of the fact, again, Matt Rosendale, not that very well known. I mean, he's not known statewide. John Tester is known statewide. This is a Democratic wave year. John Tester's not doing too bad, again, for a Democrat in Montana. These are states that aren't that partisan. They elected a Democratic governor the same year they elected Donald Trump. So right now, the Senate map, John Tester currently wins in the Montana Senate race here. Now, here's the first flip of today. Nevada goes to the Democrats. Jackie Rosen would do very well against a very unpopular senator, Dean Heller, who's one of the most unpopular senators in the United States. So we were talking about unpopular Republican incumbents in another state with a very unpopular Republican incumbent who just so happens isn't running for re-election. That is the state of Arizona, with Jeff Flake retiring this election season, leaving an open seat in the United States Senate, which brings a real possibility of a Democratic win. The current Democratic challenger, Kristen Sinema, is leading all of her Republican opponents. Martha McSally is at the top of the ticket for the GOP, who will likely win the Republican primary here against Kelly Ward and the infamous Joe Arpaio. And right now, it seems that Kristen Sinema will narrowly lead in the 2018 general election and possibly win this state for the Democrats, and it will narrowly land in their column. But when we go over to a state like Texas, Cruz just starts leading in double digits in opinion polling. We really don't see this one getting super close, but I still think that Ted Cruz will get this race down to a couple point margin. I mean, this is his race to lose. His mistakes are going to be something that's going to be used by the Democrats a lot. And when we look over at a state like Texas right now, I see Ted Cruz not narrowly, but narrowly compared to other Republicans winning in the state, winning the Senate race here. It'll likely be between 5 to 10%, so it's not too bad for the GOP, but it just shows a little bit more of a turn towards the Democratic Party. Over in the state of Tennessee right now, I do see a Democratic victory. Phil Bredesen is currently leading Marsha Blackburn in every opinion poll except for the SurveyMonkey one that just got released, which happens to be an internet poll. So when you don't cite the other polls and you use this one to your advantage, please don't do that, because this online poll is inaccurate. I mean, SurveyMonkey polls have always been proven to be mainly inaccurate. You can't take an online poll and expect nobody to either bot the poll or try to tilt it in the favor of one candidate, or just for fun. I mean, a number of people could just take the link and then they open a new window and vote again, or they use a VPN, or they use another link. Online polls are just very inaccurate ways of getting people to vote to show a real opinion poll. When you talk about calling voters or even talking to them in person and then writing down their decision, that way you can verify it's a one person, one vote instead of multiple voters from one person, which could definitely skew the results. There is no way Marsha Blackburn is leading by 14% up from losing by 5%, losing by 10%. There's no way Tennessee has that drastic of a swing when it comes to opinion polls. So right now, I do see Phil Bredesen narrowly winning here, considering that he left office with higher than a 70% approval rating, won every county in 2006. This is a Democratic wave year. This is the first time toss-up states are coming out of Republican states. I do see a narrow victory for him here. Missouri is another state that the Republicans have been targeting a lot, but Claire McCaskill is currently leading in every opinion poll except for the ones taken internally for the GOP. And keep in mind, she's gotten very lucky with all of her races, and it seems like she will be lucky again. Austin Peterson is not going to win this GOP nomination, considering that the Republican Party has already stacked the odds against him. And if he does win, it'll be a big upset and big win for outsider Republicans. But right now, the GOP doesn't seem like they want to put him over the top. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know how well he would do in a general election. People argue he may do great or he may do horrible. Right now, I haven't looked that much into it, but Austin Peterson probably isn't going to win the nomination. And Josh Hawley being so closely tied to the former governor is not good for him either. But right now, Missouri goes into the Democratic column by a narrow margin. But the state of Indiana, Mike Braun being the Donald Trump type candidate he is, I do see him narrowly winning the Indiana Senate race here. Joe Donnelly's approval rating is higher than Claire McCaskill's, but right now I do not see him winning in a state like Indiana, especially with so close ties to the vice president. I really see Mike Pence doing a last-minute push, giving Mike Braun the win here as well. North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp's not too popular at all. I mean, her approval rating dropped drastically from the first quarter of 2018. And North Dakota right now is being targeted by the president as well. Considering that the sole representative is from the state of North Dakota, we can see a Republican victory here. So this puts the Republicans over the top. They now have taken the majority in the United States Senate compared to the Democrats at 49. So where does the final seat go? The state of Florida. I see a narrow Rick Scott victory over Bill Nelson. Rick Scott's approval rating is 55%. Bill Nelson's is in the low 40%. I understand that's pretty good, but it's not higher than the incumbent governors. And, of course, we're not going to have a race with a very unknown candidate like we saw in 2012. Bill Nelson is not going to win over 60% of the vote this time. This is going to be a close race, but I see Rick Scott narrowly edging out due to statewide recognition. This being a Donald Trump state from 2016, I understand that this is a Democratic wave year. I do think Bill Nelson would do much worse against Rick Scott if this was a presidential election year, and it will get closer because of the fact that this is a Democratic wave year. But Rick Scott has a number of things on his side and could narrowly edge out a victory here, giving him the win in the state of Florida, which give the Republicans 51 seats and Democrats 49. Not to mention that Florida has opinion polling that shows Rick Scott ahead by around 5%. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.